We have with us today Tom Schultz, who is the author of the new book, Meisterbrowser, the championship-winning team of Harry Hauer. Tell us a bit about yourself, Tom.
Hello, I am Tom Schultz. I am the author of the book Meisterbrowser, the championship racing team of Harry Hauer, and I have been interested in racing practically all my life. I bought a copy of Road and Track magazine when I was in grade school, and have been hooked ever since. I've been coming up to the track here at Road America since 1958, and have been the track historian since the year 2000. My background is I have a degree in communications from Marquette University, and I started writing for publication in 1980 for Sports Car Magazine. I covered many racing series and many races for Sports Car and for On Track Magazine. In the 1990s, I spent 3 years as the press officer for the Oldsmobile Pro Series, and after that I went to the Trans Am Series, and for 7 years was the assistant press officer of that series. Since 2000, I have been here at Road America as their track historian.
What inspired you to write this book, Tom, and how did you go about it?
I have had the idea for the book about the Meisterbrowser team in the back of my head for many years. Having seen the Meisterbrowser Scarabs run back in the 1960s, I always wanted to write about them and discover that nobody had. So a number of years ago I got the idea, but it wasn't until a year and a half ago that Don Devine, one of the Meisterbrowser drivers, goaded me into getting off the mark and to do it. So I started writing it about a year ago, had the opportunity to interview the 4 Meisterbrowser drivers who were still with us at the time, and converted that into print.
Harry Hauer started the racing team in early 1959. What made him decide to do so?
Harry Hauer was an executive with Peter Hand Brewery Company in Chicago. He went to a race at Wilmot Hills in the end of 1958, his first ever race, liked what he saw and said he could do that. So he went out, bought himself a race car, went to Meadowdale, bought himself a competition license, and entered his first race. He soon realized that the car was a dog, so he needed something better, so he went and bought one of the 2 Scarabs that Lance Ravenlo had for sale. The Meisterbrowser Scarab was then born, and the rest went on from there.
The team is famous for racing the All-American Scarab. How did that come about?
The Scarab was a race car built by Lance Ravenlo in California. He built 3 front-engine sports racers, and in 1958, their first year of competition, they were virtually unbeatable. In 1959, Ravenlo changed his focus to building a Formula One team, and he put the Scarabs up for sale. Nicky Chevrolet of Chicago bought one, which Jim Jeffords drove very successfully, and then in August, Harry Hauer bought the other. At the end of 1959, circumstances relating to the Nicky Scarab evolved to the point where they sold the car, and Harry bought that car. So from the end of 1959 on, Harry Hauer had the most formidable race team imaginable. The 2 best sports racing cars in America, the Scarabs, ran in his team in 1960 and won and won and won.
Much has been made over the years about the clash of breweries. How did Augie Pabst of the Milwaukee, Wisconsin Pabst Brewery family come to drive for a team owned by the Chicago, Illinois Peter Hand Brewery under its Meisterbrow name?
When Harry Hauer purchased the first Scarab, he needed a driver. He realized that his skill level was such that he could not handle a car of that magnitude right off the bat. So he cast around for a driver. He heard that Paul O'Shea may be available, and that Paul O'Shea was working temporarily at Pabst Motors in Milwaukee. He phoned Pabst Motors. Augie Pabst answered the phone, and when asked where Paul O'Shea was, told him that Paul O'Shea was out on the road doing PR work for Mercedes-Benz, and that further that Paul O'Shea had a ride for the year with Sadler. Harry Hauer said, well, gee, I need a driver. Do you know anybody? Augie Pabst says, yes, I do. Me. Augie went to Meadowdale, had a trial in the Scarab, immediately impressed, and went to the Milwaukee Mile, which had an infield road course, won the first race, and from there they went on to championships. 1960 was a tremendous year for the team. They ran the 2 Scarabs all season long. They won 5 SCCA National Championship events, plus 1 USAC Road Racing Division Championship event. In addition to those 6 major wins, they won numerous smaller races. At the end of the year, Augie Pabst was the SCCA's overall national champion and was named Driver of the Year by Competition Press magazine.
A famous incident in 1960 was the grudge match between Hauer and Bob Carnes, who built the Bocar Racer. How did that occur?
Harry Hoyer's first race car, which he bought at the very start of his racing career, was a Bocar. Those cars were built in Denver, Colorado by Bob Carnes. Harry immediately realized, after only 1 race, that the car was a dog. It was fast in a straight line, but handled like a truck. He knew he needed something better. Consequently, he bought a Scarab, and a few months later, bought the second Scarab. Bob Carnes did not like that, especially since Harry went on the record saying that the Bocar was not a good car. During the 1960 season, Bob Carnes ran his mouth constantly about how the Bocar was a better car and how he could beat the Scarabs. That finally got under Harry's skin. Harry called his bluff. Harry took the Meister Browser team to Continental Divide Raceway in Denver, Colorado, and they had a grudge match. Harry Hoyer in the Scarab and Bob Carnes in the Bocar. Harry easily won the race, and nothing much was ever heard from Bob Carnes again.
One could say that inevitably Pabst would have to leave the team because of his name. How was that handled?
The very end of the 1960 season, the inevitable happened. The Meister Browser Brewery Board of Directors could not handle the fact that a Pabst was winning all the races. Pabst was getting all the publicity, and Meister Brau was not. So they came to an amicable parting of the ways. Augie fully understood the situation and went on to drive for Briggs Cunningham. Harry continued in 1961 with 1 Scarab, selling the other.
A new car, the Chaparral, joins the team. After racing the Scarab for 3 seasons, age was catching up with it. What did Hauer do to keep the team at the forefront of the racing world?
The Scarab, by the end of 1961, was becoming old and, frankly, obsolete. Troutman and Barnes Company in California, which was employed by Reventlow in the building of the Scarab race cars, was now an independent outfit, and they designed a race car was in effect the successor to the Scarab. They called the car the Riverside. Jim Jeffords of Milwaukee was the instigator of the project, but Jim got very ill and sold his portion of the project to Jim Hall of Midland, Texas. Jim Hall financed the purchase of 2 of the Chaparral cars, which were now called Chaparral because Jim Hall then financed the construction of 2 of the Riverside race cars. Since Jim Hall was so involved in it, Troutman and Barnes asked him to actually name the car. Jim named the car Chaparral, which was a Roadrunner bird, which was very much a feature of the scrub and desert of West Texas, where Jim Hall lived. Jim Hall had 2 Chaparrals, and Harry Hoyer quickly became aware of this new car, which was a successor to the Scarab, so he placed an order also. Harry's car was late in coming, and he had hoped to run it during 1961, but did not actually get it until the end of that season, and took it into the 1962 season as his main car.
Don Devine joins the team and wins after a false start in 1963. Don Devine, then a virtual unknown, joined the team. How did that come about, and what did he accomplish?
Don Devine, in 1960, was driving an MGA in SCCA club events. At a race at the Milwaukee track, in the rain, he drove a very fine race and impressed Harry Hoyer and Augie Pabst. They saw some value and ability in young Don Devine. Harry put out feelers for Don to join the team, only to discover that Don was not legally of age. So that was put on hold for a while. In 1962, Don got a tryout in the Scarab, and due to a stuck throttle, the car had a crash, and Don, as a consequence, did not get the ride right away, even though it wasn't his fault. Don finally got his chance in the 1963 season, and Harry decided to bring the Scarab out and let Don run that while he ran the Chaparral. At just Don's very first SCCA national event that he ever drove, which was at Virginia International Raceway, Don, in a 6-season-old Scarab, won the race. He went on to win a couple other races at the regional level and came very, very close, except for very bad luck, to winning a USRC Pro race at Laguna Seca. Don Devine was a great asset to the team.
The final full year of the team was in 1963. In August, Augie Pabst made a one-off guest appearance with astounding results. What was that?
The 1963 season, with Harry driving the Chaparral and Don driving the Scarab, went fairly well. Harry Hoyer won 2 SCCA Nationals, the June Sprints at Road America and the Meadowdale SCCA National. Don won the Virginia Raceway SCCA National. In addition, they were triumphant in a number of regional races. The race at Road America saw a 1-2 for Meister Browser, with Don trailing Harry home. At Meadowdale, Harry was first and Don was third. In addition, in the pro races, they ran very well and would have won a couple except for bad luck. In a very interesting twist of fate, Don Devine was unable to race at the Continental Divide USRC race in August of 1963, and Augie Pabst was available that weekend. The fact that he was Pabst driving Meisterbrow, Harry chose to overlook and not tell the brewery board about it. Augie came, drove the 6-year-old Scarab, and won overall the United States Road Racing Championship race at Continental Divide. A tremendous achievement.
The team ended very abruptly in early 1964. What happened, and what was Howard's reaction?
In 1964, things were looking up for Meister Browser team. They had the Chaparral. They retired the Scarab finally, and Harry placed an order for a new rear-engine McKee Sports Racer to be the new Meister Browser car. They ran at Daytona. They ran at Augusta in pro races, only to have the plug pulled unbeknownst to them. When the team returned to Chicago after the Augusta, Georgia race, they found the shop empty. Behind their back, without their knowledge, the brewery board of directors pulled the plug, killed the racing program, cleaned out their racing shop, sold all their equipment. Needless to say, Harry was absolutely livid. Harry quit his position with the brewery, quit his position on the board, sold all his stock, and left, never to look back.
With the team folding and Howard's departure from the brewery, what did he do after that?
Harry was a very interesting fellow. He was a pilot. He was in the Navy Reserve and was licensed to fly all manner of aircraft from single to 4 engines. He was a race driver as a spur-of-the-moment thing and developed into quite a very good race driver. He was the SCCA's class champion in 61, 62, and 63. After he had the team pull out from underneath him, he walked away from racing for a number of years and turned to a charter airline business in the Caribbean, which he ran for many, many years. He came back for 1 year in 1969 and raced a Lola T70 in club events, but that was the extent of his racing after the Meister Browser days. Harry was a very interesting chap. By his own admission, he had a very hair-trigger
temper. And as we see in the book, there are many instances where that temper flared to the surface, and woe be all those who are around him.